This segment of Thoroughbreds Argo is brought to you by Inglis, celebrating graduates both on and off the track. Charlotte Inglis has long been part of the famous Inglis Sales company family, but she's an accomplished horsewoman in her own right and has plenty of knowledge about retraining thoroughbreds and finding them the best homes. It was a pleasure to catch up with Charlotte in the Southern Highlands of New South Wales. The rehoming of thoroughbreds, it's a massive issue, I guess, for the industry at large, and obviously the Inglis team, your family that's involved, you do so much in terms of trying to make sure that horses that are going through sales, they're not necessarily travelling as much now, there are online sales,
yes.
There's an age limit and so forth.
Yes.
But it's also a bigger picture, isn't it, in trying to encourage the equestrian industry, I guess, or participants to take on our thoroughbreds. How do you think it's going?
Yes, it's an interesting time because there's modern sport horses being bred all around the world now in all different disciplines. So many disciplines are getting very breed focused, and that's left a little bit of a hole for the thoroughbreds. In 2000, our Olympics at Sydney was the last time we saw the long extended version of eventing, and traditionally the thoroughbreds had fed into eventing very strongly. But when they removed the roads and tracks and the steeplechase components and shortened the cross-country course, it didn't need such an endurance-based horse, and the warm blood from Europe suddenly came into play where they weren't fit enough to do eventing before. So that was a major change for us, and I think at that point we needed to think of other ways of getting people interested and still riding and buying the thoroughbred for all disciplines, for dressage, pony club, hacking, show jumping. We needed to find a way to keep the thoroughbreds feeding on into homes after racing, and we need to really look at that now.
There's a lot that's been done. I guess, there are some fantastic initiatives, right around the country, of course, with the PRAs or the Principal Racing Authorities, with competitions in New South Wales and Victoria, Queensland, South Australia, all around the place, WA. But it really is about, I guess, the grassroots of it's generally a younger rider, an amateur rider that seems to be taking on the numbers of these thoroughbreds. How can we encourage them to go for the thoroughbred over another breed?
I think we've got to look to a model like Chrissy Harris's model, which was the Sport Horse Association. And what that did was provide classes for thoroughbreds and prize money for thoroughbreds in classes. And I think if we want to do this well, we need to have really decent prize money to attract professionals to want to have thoroughbreds in their teams again. And if the professionals are training the thoroughbreds and they're out competing and making decent prize money, then they can on-sell the ones that maybe aren't going to be top-level horses, and also uncover the ones that are top-level horses and have a much better rehoming system, where horses are already trained by a professional, competed, then might filter off to a pony club home or be good enough to be a top-level eventer or, a medium-level show jumper, or they move well enough to be a dressage horse, but they've made prize money from training the horse, and then they can hand them on maybe at not such a large cost to appropriate homes with the right training and an understanding of their soundness and temperament and ability.
Another dollar, young star, they go line.
So how do you see how racing owners are? You're at the races a lot with Arthur, regularly. You speak and know, obviously, quite well a lot of owners, big, small, medium. How do we encourage those owners to maybe support their horses off the track, maybe contributing to some of this prize money, continuing their association with the horse?
I think if there was a percent of turnover that came out of racing, out of maybe winnings of racing or from the tab or from a source that could leave the owner in the horse and the horse could be sold on so the owner could still be involved without having to fork out, it would be a good thing. I think at the moment owners have a lot of horses and it's hard for them to think about continuing with that horse for the rest of its life. But if they could stay involved because they've been supported by the industry and then the horses have been picked up by competitive riders that are incentivised by a thoroughbred prize money system, not just one comp a year, but continued throughout the year. You might find that they feel prestige in staying connected to their thoroughbreds, and if their thoroughbreds then, become a super jumper or dressage horse, they might actually enjoy the onward journey with the horse. But it's hard for an owner to go and find a dressage rider or find a person. It really needs to be, I believe, the prize money that encourages the professional riders and even good AMI riders to take on a thoroughbred, the incentive of making decent money when they compete it. And then it does open up the doors. But, for the average thoroughbred owner, they probably don't know people that compete in the industry. And so to make those connections is difficult. I think it has to be made in a different way, probably, with some help from the thoroughbred industry.
You've had horses all your life. Tell us, you obviously have horses here now
Yes.
in the Highlands. For an owner that might not have thought, one horse, it's a lot to look after, isn't it? Just having
a lot.
a single horse. What are some of the things that they need to be aware of when they're trying to find a home for that horse?
Well, I suppose it takes when you get a thoroughbred off the track, they're very fit, they're ready to go, often a lot fitter than an equestrian horse would be. And they've been trained very well, most of them, but in different fields. So it literally takes probably 2 years to really have a horse performing well. You can do it quickly, but to do it well, particularly if it's an amateur owner, they're probably looking at 2 years of expenses before they are at the point where they can really get a lot of pleasure from whichever discipline they compete in or what they do with their horse. Initially, they need time to let down. You change their feed regimes, you introduce them to a different style of riding. They've got to change their muscle structures a little bit, particularly if they're heading into hacking or dressage. They need training. Often they've got a little bit of anxiety around, adrenaline-based sport. So you've got to almost de-adrenalise them. So it takes time. You can't just grab a horse off the track and hope that the next week you're going to be out there doing something. So for professional riders and for attracting them, it's having a system of prize money that really makes them want to have a thoroughbred on their team and train it and then pass it on appropriately, once it's trained and they know what it can do. I think probably having amateur and professional classes is great. Attracting the professionals is a really good thing because at least they can train them and then hand them on to correct homes already trained, already knowing what the horse is like. An amateur rider might take one horse and they might love that horse and produce that horse and have a wonderful journey with it. But we are playing a bit of a numbers game. We've got a lot of horses coming off the track, a lot of horses that are sound and would make incredible performance horses in many different disciplines. We really need to have a system that gets the professionals on board, that they might take 5 and produce them, compete them for decent prize money and then be able to rehome them to the appropriate homes already with an understanding of their temperament and ability.
And there really needs to be a sort of a national traceability understanding of where these horses go. I mean, this is sort of the missing link, isn't it, really?
The system that EA has, of course, a horse that jumps over 1.5 metre has to be registered to jump. There could be a system where all horses, they're already registered as thoroughbreds. It's just an extension of that, and the horse goes on to a different discipline and is registered from the day it's handed over, and then those papers, just like any registration papers, continue with the horse and must be re-registered. Every time the horse changes home, we need to know where that horse is. A system of registration is possible. I think it's already in place. It just needs to be implemented, and maybe from a lower level, rather than waiting till a horse is competing at a certain level before it needs registration. Potentially horses should be registered as they are in the thoroughbred world, crossed across straight into its EA discipline that it takes on. And I don't see any reason why owners of thoroughbreds can't stay involved in some way if they'd like to.
It's so rewarding, I have to say. When you
it
see a
really
horse
is. If suddenly you've got a horse that won on the track and it's winning in another area, it is lovely to know your horse is happy, enjoying its life and successful in another area, and loved and looked after.
And it is great seeing, we see so many Cascadian and Zaki and, Nature Strip and so much Chautauqua. There have been so many big named horses that have been doing well. And I think there's an enormous interest in them from the general racing population. It's just sort of forging that link and growing it, isn't it?
Absolutely. And there are some amazing thoroughbreds. I mean, they are amazing athletes. It's just about rediscovering what their next, career is really. And they need an opportunity to be with good people to be able to help them do that.